Have you ever walked into a store and been watched by a fellow employee or fellow boss? Have you ever been upper community and members of the community or officers of the community and said, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Or saying, "Hey, you do not belong here"? Have you ever had any racial slurs, any racial name calling, or any racial stereotypes towards your way? If you can say yes to any of these questions, you have been a victim of racial discrimination. Now, the great Dr. Martin Luther King noticed it was a big trend in our communities, in our land, and in our country. Who is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you might say? I'm so glad you asked. I'm going to tell you about him. Dr. Martin Luther King, he was born January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. He was also the pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in the great state of Montgomery, Alabama. And also from 1950, 1960s, he led peaceful civil rights movements throughout those times. Now. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has many accomplishments throughout his whole entire life. But I'm going to name the top three that I feel like are most important and I feel like that needs to be recognized. One of them is in 1957, he was elected president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. He was also named Time Magazine Man of the Year and was recognized as a global leader. And also at the age of 35, he received the Nobel Peace Prize, and that in the history books, it's the youngest person to ever receive that. Now, only thing that Martin Luther King wanted was equality for all races. But I cannot give this presentation and I'm not talking about the inequalities that have happened in our nation. One of the stories is Rodney King. The second story is Rosa Parks. And the third story is Emmett Till. Speaking of Rosa Parks, she was part of a movement called the bus boycott. What is the bus boycott? Oh, no, wait. I am going to tell you. In the 60s, African Americans had to sit on the back of the bus, and the white Americans sat in the front. And there was no seats available. Then for a white American, the black Americans had to get up and give up their seat. There was an incident where Rosa Parks was asked to give up her seat to a fellow white American. Rosa Parks did not agree with that whatsoever and refused to give up her seat. And because of that, she was arrested because of her actions. Dr. Martin Luther King got word of this information and noticed that a change had to be made. So because of this, he led a movement called the bus boycott that lasted over 382 days. And on the great day of December 21st, 1956, the bus organizations noticed what was going on and made it mandatory that there was no segregation allowed on the bus and that black Americans and white Americans were able to sit anywhere they would like. The second movement that the great Martin Luther King did in his lifetime was called the March to Washington. In the 1960s, African Americans were not allowed to vote in the state of Alabama. So that means they couldn't vote for their mayor, they couldn't vote for their congressman, they couldn't even vote for the president of the United States. And this was happening in Martin Luther King Jr.'s hometown. And MLK was not having that whatsoever. So he led a march all the way to Washington that gathered over 250,000 people. Let me say that again, 250,000 people, where he gave, arguably people say, one of the greatest speeches of all time called I Have a Dream speech. The third thing that Martin Luther King did was the Memphis sanitation work strikes. The work environment for these employees were absolutely horrible. I mean, they had low pay rate, they didn't get no health insurance or anything. The employees were tired of it and led a strike. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. got word of this and decided to be part of the movement. So on February 12, 1968, the strike began. The protest lasted for more than 64 days. And on the great day of April 12, 1968, the strike ended and the Memphis agreed to give them their demands and their needs. This movement was so big that it even gained national attention. Now, furthermore, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the only thing he wanted was for us to have equality throughout our whole nation. He didn't want us to look at each other, oh, you're white or you're black. or you're Hispanic, or you're Asian. He wanted all of us to love each other just by the content of our character and not the color of our skin. He wanted to want everyone to know that we all bleed the same and that we all deserve justice when it's due, and we all deserve to love one another when it's due. To end, before I end my speech, I want to give a great quote that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. quoted that I think is appropriate for this speech. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. I appreciate you listening to my speech. I hope you were able to be informed, and I hope everyone have a great day. Thank you.